The storage unit was 8 feet by 10 feet, roughly the size of the pantry in the house I'd given to my son and his wife. My few remaining possessions looked small against the metal walls, like artifacts from someone else's life. 3 weeks earlier, I'd signed over the deed to my home of 46 years, believing their promises of a mother-in-law suite addition. Instead, I got a storage unit membership and a studio apartment across town. What they didn't realize was that I'd learned a thing or two in my 70 years. Sometimes the most powerful moves are the quietest ones. My name is Martha Wilson. I taught high school English for 35 years before retiring. My husband, Richard, passed away 12 years ago, leaving me alone in the 4-bedroom colonial we'd purchased when we were expectant parents. Our son, Michael, was born a month after we moved in. The house grew as our family did, a sunroom addition when Michael started crawling, a finished basement for teenage hangouts, gardens that bloom through seasons of birthdays, graduations, and eventually Richard's memorial service. After Richard died, the house felt impossibly large. Each room echoed with memories, some comforting, others painfully absent. Still, I managed. Book club meetings in the living room, volunteer work at the library, occasional substitute teaching to keep my mind sharp. I had routines, independence, purpose. When Michael married Allison 5 years ago, they settled into a small apartment downtown. She worked in marketing. He'd followed his father into accounting. They visited every Sunday, filling the dining room with conversations about their week and plans for the future. Last year, when Allison announced her pregnancy, their apartment suddenly seemed inadequate. "Mom, we've been thinking," Michael said during one Sunday dinner. "This house is so big for just one person, and with the baby coming..." "We've been looking at houses," Allison added, "but the market is brutal right now." I knew where the conversation was heading. Part of me had been expecting it. The practical side, the side Richard always appreciated, recognized the sense in it. A 3-generation household meant shared expenses, help with childcare, companionship. "What if you moved in here?" I suggested. "There's plenty of room." Their exchange of glances told me they'd been hoping for this. "Actually," Michael said carefully, "we were thinking it might make sense to simplify things. What if we took over the house and helped you find somewhere smaller, somewhere with less maintenance, less worry? We'd build you a beautiful mother-in-law suite," Allison promised. "You'd have your own space, but be close enough to see the baby grow up." It seemed so reasonable at the time. The transition began smoothly enough. I started sorting through decades of possessions, deciding what to keep for my new, smaller space. Michael and Allison were attentive, enthusiastic about renovation plans. They brought over sample boards with paint colors, flooring options, cabinet finishes. "We're thinking the suite will go here," Michael explained, pointing to architectural drawings that showed an addition extending from the back of the house. Private entrance, kitchenette, accessible bathroom. 3 months of sorting and planning passed. The baby, my granddaughter Lily, arrived, beautiful and perfect. The joy of her birth overshadowed my growing unease about the lack of construction progress. "Just finalizing permits," Michael assured me when I asked. "These things take time." Meanwhile, more of my belongings disappeared into boxes. The walls, once covered with family photos and artwork collected over decades, were stripped bare, then painted in Allison's preferred neutral tones. My garden was partially paved for additional parking. "We need to start moving some of your things to make room for the nursery furniture," Allison said one afternoon, her voice gentle but firm. "We've rented a storage unit temporarily." The storage unit was meant to hold items until the mother-in-law suite was ready. Each weekend, more boxes made the journey from home to metal container. My beloved piano, the one Richard had surprised me with on our 20th anniversary, was deemed too large for the suite design. 6 months after I'd agreed to their plan, the deed transfer papers appeared on the dining table. "The contractor needs the homeowner to sign off on the permits," Michael explained. "It'll be simpler if the house is in our names." "And for insurance purposes," Allison added, "with the baby now." I signed, trusting my son's word and the detailed plans for my suite that sat on the coffee table. 2 weeks later, Michael sat me down for what he called a slight change of plans. The contractor says adding the suite would require extensive foundation work, he began. And with Lily, the timing just isn't right for major construction, Allison continued. We found a wonderful alternative. The alternative was a studio apartment in a senior living complex across town. The rent, they assured me, would be covered by them, a gesture of gratitude for the house. But what about being close to Lily, watching her grow up? I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. You'll still see her all the time, Allison promised. We'll bring her to visit, and you can come here for Sunday dinners just like we used to do. By the end of the month, I was settled into a 600-square-foot apartment. My world reduced to essentials, plus whatever fit in an 8x10 storage unit that I now paid for myself. 3 months passed. Sunday dinners became monthly phone calls. Visits with Lily were constantly rescheduled due to nap times, fevers, or Allison's mother being in town. The distance between my apartment and my former home might as well have been an ocean. On my 70th birthday, I sat alone at my small kitchen table, a cupcake with a single candle before me. My phone rang. Michael, calling to wish me happy birthday and apologize for not being able to visit. Lily was fussy, he explained. Maybe next weekend. After we hung up, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Pictures of the house through seasons. Richard shoveling snow from the driveway. Michael playing in sprinklers on the lawn. The magnificent oak tree in autumn glory. I paused on a photo from 5 years earlier. My garden in full bloom. The pride of the neighborhood. That garden had been my therapy after Richard died. Each plant, each stone pathway, laid with purpose and love. Now, according to Michael's occasional updates, it was being simplified for easier maintenance. I put down my phone and looked around my apartment. The walls were bare, not because I lacked decorations, but because hanging anything felt like admitting this was permanent. The neighbors were strangers. The community room downstairs, which the complex manager had enthusiastically promoted, was just a larger space to feel alone in. This wasn't living. This was waiting. The next morning, I called Diane, my best friend since our teaching days, and now a successful real estate agent in retirement. I need your advice, I said, and then I need your help. 2 weeks later, I visited my storage unit, not to drop off more displaced memories, but to retrieve something specific, a folder of old documents Richard had insisted I keep. Inside were investments I'd forgotten, insurance policies, and a substantial inheritance from my parents that I'd never touched. The following day, I met with Diane and her associate, a young man named Jeffrey who specialized in commercial real estate. "Are you sure about this?" Diane asked as I signed the paperwork. "More sure than I've been about anything in years," I replied. That evening, I called Michael. "I'd like to treat you and Allison to dinner this weekend," I said. "There's something important I want to discuss." "Is everything okay, Mom?" he asked, concern finally present in his voice. "Everything is about to be," I answered. The restaurant was upscale, the kind of place Richard and I had saved for anniversaries. Michael and Allison arrived 15 minutes late, full of apologies and updates about Lily, who was home with a sitter. "You look different, Mom," Michael said, studying my face. "New haircut?" What was different wasn't external. It was the straightness of my spine, the certainty in my eyes. After ordering, I placed a folder on the table between us. "I wanted to share some news," I said. "I've made some changes." Allison glanced at her watch. "Changes?" I opened the folder and slid over the first document, a deed with my name on it. "I've purchased a property." Michael's eyebrows rose. "A property? You mean like a condo?" "Not exactly. It's the Hanover building downtown." Confusion crossed their faces. The Hanover building was a recently renovated mixed-use development. Retail spaces on the ground floor, luxury apartments above. "I don't understand," Michael said slowly. It's an investment, I explained. Something to generate income now and leave for Lily's education later. But how could you possibly afford? Your father was very careful with our money, and my parents left more than I ever needed. I slid over another document. I've also established a trust. The apartment complex where I'm living now, I've given notice. I'll be moving into the Hanover building next month, the penthouse unit. Allison's mouth opened and closed without sound. Michael stared at the papers, his accounting brain calculating figures. There's one more thing. I removed the final document from my folder. This is an offer to purchase back my house, our family home, market value, plus 20%. The silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken recognitions. They had miscalculated not just my financial position, but my capacity to act independently. "Mom," Michael began, "you don't need to do this. We never meant to—" "I know what you meant," I interrupted gently. "You meant to simplify, to solve problems, to make logical decisions about assets and spaces." I closed the folder. But a home isn't just an asset. Memory isn't just sentimentality, and promises matter. "The offer expires in 30 days, I continued. "If you decide not to sell back to me, that's your choice. The house is legally yours. But know that either way, I'll be living downtown, running my new business venture, and creating a life that makes me happy." I signaled for the check. "Oh, and I've hired a landscape company to restore my garden design at my new building. They're starting with planting an oak tree in the courtyard next week." Michael's eyes glistened. The oak tree was always Dad's favorite part of our yard. "Yes," I agreed. He understood the importance of roots. They sold the house back to me. Not immediately. There were weeks of tense negotiations, consultations with lawyers, and one particularly difficult conversation where Allison cried and accused me of manipulating them. But eventually, pragmatism prevailed. The generous offer I'd made would allow them to purchase a home better suited to their needs, without the complicated history mine carried. I didn't move back, though. That surprised everyone, including myself. The Hanover building became not just an investment, but a fresh start. I renovated the penthouse with wide doorways, accessible features, and space for a baby grand piano. The garden in the courtyard blossomed under my supervision. The commercial spaces filled with tenants, including a bookstore cafe where I now host a weekly reading group for seniors and young parents alike. Michael, Allison, and Lily visit every Sunday. Not out of obligation, but because healing happens in small, consistent moments. The family home stands ready for gatherings and holidays, but my daily life unfolds in a place of my own creation. Last week, while Lily played on my new balcony under Allison's watchful eye, Michael helped me hang artwork in my living room. "I still don't understand why you bought back the house if you weren't going to live in it," he said, adjusting a frame. "Some things we reclaim not to possess them," I replied, "but to remember we deserve to possess ourselves." The storage unit is empty now, not because I reclaimed all its contents, but because I finally understood the difference between preserving memories and living in them. Sometimes what changes everything isn't what you take back, but what you choose to leave behind.